Before we start, my guest to my right, excuse me, McGarvin, or the left if you're watching on YouTube. But I want to ask you, where do we go from here? I literally you got to rip the Band-Aid off. Where do they go from here? Like, what's next? Like,
what is next? They get themselves a nice OC, and they flesh out that roster, the offensive roster in particular. Pick up a couple new tackles. Get you I think you really do need a veteran wide receiver, and then you go from there. But I think the first step to ripping off the Band-Aid is you gut the entire offensive operation and basically start from scratch with more experienced play callers, more experienced play designers, more experienced offensive minds, period.
So when it comes to, veteran wide receiver, I have one question for you because it's become very popular.
I see that. Hopkins or bust. Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm a big fan of Nuke Hopkins. That'd be obviously a big get for the Patriots. And I know that after the whole Cardinals game, the NFL Films, conversations between him and Bill that was put out, and so everyone obviously started speculating at that point. And then when Arizona came out yesterday, and were reportedly looking to deal him in the offseason, and then today he wrote his goodbye post on Instagram. It kind of like solidified, like, all right, he's going to be gone, and that whole no trade clause kind of puts him in the driver's seat as far as where he wants to go, right? So either the Cardinals move him to a team that he wants to go to, or he doesn't get moved at all and he gets released, at which point he would just go to a team he wants to go to anyway. So either way, Nuke Hopkins is going to end up somewhere that he wants to go. As far as Nuke or bust, I'm not quite ready to say all that. Because there are other players, there are a few other receivers that I think could make sense, obviously given the right compensation.
Can I give you one in particular I think that could
work? Sure.
T. Higgins.
T. Higgins is fun. That would be a fun one.
I know it sounds kind of weird, and everybody else going, oh. Look at who Cincinnati's got to pay coming up.
Yep.
That Burrow contract's not going to be cheap. That Jamar Chase contract's probably going to be close to $20 million.
Yep.
Someone's going to get the short end of the stick, and I can see a potential A.J. Brown situation. Another guy I look at potentially too is Michael Pittman Jr. I know he's wide receiver one for
from the Colts. Yeah.
But we don't know where they're going to go because, I know you and I spoke after the Colts game, but that's a team where we're like, I think you kind of got to burn it down and start from scratch for the Colts.
They're in a big rebuild. I don't know if they know that yet or if the fan base knows it yet, but they're in a pretty big rebuild at this point. I don't think they have anything going. That offensive line just completely fell apart. You can say it's injury all you want, but Quentin Nelson's not really playing well. Ryan Kelly, their center, who was supposed to be really good, also hasn't played well in the games that he's played. I think they're in a pretty substantial rebuild, so that would be interesting. The one I like out of Denver, I really like Jerry Jeudy. I think he's one who could be moved just because they paid Tim Patrick, they paid Cortland Sutton, and obviously Judy's up next. KJ Hamler is also due for a new contract. I believe both were drafted in the same year, so they're both due for a contract at this point. I think really the odd man out may end up being Jerry Jeudy, although he had a monster end to the year, relatively speaking, because Russ is still the quarterback, so they didn't have a great time. But that's a player that I would like to see. Obviously, the Alabama connection there is driving it there for me. I'm like, oh yeah, my bias is kicking in, but that's one player that I'd like to see here.
And that's the thing too. Everyone's right now, can you go sign a free agency? If you look at the free agency list for wide receivers, the biggest name on that list is currently a Patriot. That is the biggest.
Myers.
It's a very weak class in the free agency for when it comes to wide receivers. So my thing is, I think if you can get a Higgins or if you can get a Jeudy in a trade, you have that little bit of that rookie control left on them, or at least I know for Jeudy, I think you have 2 more. You can get 2 more years, and then you get Higgins. You have a year plus you get an extension that kicks in next year. It's better cap wise. Meanwhile, with Nuke, I think if we bring in Nuke, I think Myers is gone. That's what's me, because I think it's either that or a team what was it? Remember the thing I told you about the other day? Play stupid games, win stupid prizes.
Yeah.
There's a team out there who did something really stupid a couple months ago when it came to drafting and trading for a wide receiver. And that team has the Chicago Bears have a lot of cap room. So there's people saying there, the Bears are going to go and offer Myers a Christian Kirk contract, which Myers is a great receiver. Don't get me wrong, but
That would be
I
insane.
could easily see.
That would be.
It's just that's how the NFL works. I could see a wide receiver
Yeah.
desperate team getting that. Meanwhile, New England, they're not so much wide receiver desperate as they just need that piece. It's like Buffalo 2 years ago. It's like Miami this past year. It's all
where
that.
they have like a solid foundation. They just need someone to take it to the next level. Yeah, I agree. I think Michael Thomas is another one from the Saints. I know that people have really soured on him over the last 3 years because he hasn't really played very much.
That's a change of scenery.
Yeah, I think whatever team he ends up on next is going to really benefit from that. So I guess we'll see. I don't know that the Patriots will go out and trade for a receiver. I think they should, though. I know a lot of people are looking towards the draft and they're like, oh, they should draft someone. But I don't necessarily think they need a young developmental kind of wide receiver. I think they just kind of need someone who can play right now and who can be in the right spot and get in the right spot to get the offense moving, because I think that's really what they lack right now.
And also, Lad McConkey is not a draft eligible, I think, until next year anyway. So just give that some time. 2024, Lad McConkey.
We'll get there.
Patriot. We're putting it into the air, or Slade Bolden signs as a free agent in the offseason.
I was never big on Bolden. I know he played at Bama and he had the connection with Mac, but I just don't see an NFL athlete when he plays. So I'm just like, eh.
I do it more for like the Danny Amendola stuff. That's why I do it more for. It's more for like It's the whole stereotype Patriots love their short white wide receivers. Him, Edelman, Hogan, who actually I was a really big fan when they signed him all those years ago.
Hogan was a good player.
He was. Before we get into more of the nitty gritty, I wanted to ask you personally, 8-9 but did you have a game this year that really stuck out to you as like your favorite game to have watched?
Damn, that is tough because some of these games were tough to watch. I really had a good time watching the Vikings game, even though the Patriots lost, just because the offense, and I know that the Vikings defense is not very good, but I thought the offense like showed a really good vertical passing game, and so that was just nice to see. Obviously, you got the 35-yarder to Nelson Aguilar. Hunter Henry was having his best game of the season by far. It was, I thought that was a good game to watch up until the kick return and then the weird officiating on the touchdown to Hunter Henry that wasn't. So that was, and it was also one of the few games where the line like held together until the very last drive, which funny they, shit the bed. But I think that may be the one, just because I can't really remember any other games. I mean, the Jets game where Marcus Jones took the punt return back, that was exciting. But the first like 58 minutes of that game were abysmal. So I was like,
The Marcus Jones game, that was like watching Spider-Man 3, where it's like the first like couple hours were just like there was no like action or anything, and then the last 20 minutes of the movie it was like all exciting and everything like that. That was that game, literally 59 minutes of whatever, and then 10 seconds of just fucking electricity. And also, I have to give a shout out to Kevin Harlan because him calling that was better than I think anyone else could have done.
I mean, Kevin Harlan is one of my favorite play-by-play guys in the league. I know that people have their favorites, and for whatever reason, Kevin Harlan doesn't come up nearly as much as he should. I think he's one of the best in the business, especially when something weird happens. Whenever like there's weirdness in his games, he calls it so perfectly, and I was like, yeah, I'm with it. What game do you have as your favorite?
Mine on a biased rate is Detroit. That's the one I got to go to this year.
Right.
It was 29-0. It was there. Other ones, like I want to say the Colts game, just because that was a game where, you go out there, you play, you take advantage of your situation and you go from there. Like there was all sides of the ball were clicking that day. You basically bullied Sam Ellinger for 60 minutes. And the other one too was Minnesota 2, except up until pretty much the Alex Kemp call and the touchdown. That's where stuff started to go sideways. And then even though they lost and Matt got hurt, the Baltimore game was another one too. That was a
was a cool game. Just because again they had that vertical passing game. Devontae Parker was just absolutely putting it on them. And it was one of those games where, like, aside from like the actual football stuff, it was really interesting for me because I remember the timeline was just so anti Parker prior to that game, and then everyone just shut up like collectively, and I was like, cool, That was pretty good because it was just one of those annoying things where like, that was what week 4, right? And or you know what I mean? And
which game, Detroit or
no, Baltimore. That was week 3.
Week 3.
Yeah,
that was a home opener.
So we had 2 games prior to that. There was the game, obviously down in Miami, and then they played in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't understand how people had soured on Parker so quickly in just 2 games because it wasn't like he did anything, egregious. It was he was on the wrong end of a couple of Mac turnovers. Like he was intercepted. He was the target when Mac was intercepted, and so a lot of people were just like, "Oh yeah, Parker sucks," and I'm like, I don't know, it's a little early for that.
Even his last few games down the stretch, he played really well. He played really well on Sunday.
Yep.
He had the Bailey Zappi touchdown. I'm going to do not a complete 180. I'm going to do a 90-degree turn. But one thing I want to say, because I know you and I have talked about this off camera and DMs, when it comes to complete games this year, because that's something we're going to get into in a minute, the best complete game, I think, of the season, though, was the Cleveland game week 6, where all sides of the ball clicked for 60 minutes.
Agree. Yep.
I don't think they'd had a complete game since. The Colts one and the Cardinals one, you can kind of say, but I think the Cardinals, they took advantage of a negative situation, which I don't like when people go like, oh, you only won because Kyler got hurt. Well, yes and no. I think, hey, we still have a fighting chance even if Kyler played. But at the same time, too, it's not like Colt McCoy threw a pick 6. That was the touchdown. No, that was DeAndre Hopkins not holding onto the ball properly. Yep. The defense held their own too. Mac played well against Arizona because Arizona's defense isn't really anything to like be scared about. It's not like it's San Francisco or even LA. But no, when I look at games that are complete, I look at Detroit and I look at Cleveland. Those are the 2 games I look at where all assets of the ball clicked for 60 minutes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, you can make an argument, I guess, for the Baltimore game. But I mean, the offense turned it over a bunch, but they were moving the ball. So I guess you can, if you really want to stretch it. But I think, honestly speaking, those are the 2 that I'm thinking of as like the complete games. Other than that, like you can pick any loss from the schedule. Not even losses, because I mean, some of the wins were like that too. But you can pick any game from the schedule, just looking and you're like, yep, the offense lost in that game, or the defense lost in the game. Special teams threw up all over themselves in this one. And it was just like that throughout the entire year. And it's like, that's when I was like, all right, cool. Something has to change because this is absolutely ridiculous.
Because like when I literally did this where I like looked at all 17 games. I was like, okay, week 1, that was offensive loss because our defense held Miami to 13 points when we expected an explosive Miami team. Week 2, Pittsburgh, I still look at that game as if the Aguilar catch doesn't happen, I don't know if they win that game.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. That was like the one play they had on offense and absolutely nothing else going.
Yeah. And then week 3, I think if Kyle Duggar played in that game, I think there's a chance that they win because Mark Andrews had a monster game that day. I remember that.
Yep. And he was he mostly had Josh Bledsoe in coverage on him. And it was a fine matchup. Just you're asking a lot because Mark Andrews is a good player.
It's kind of like good to great.
Yeah. The Green Bay game, the offense, obviously, I mean, and that's really no fault of any coaching or anything. They just were starting Brian Hoyer and then ended up with Zappi, who threw, I think, 10 passes or 15 passes, completed 10 of them. It was just like,
I view that game the same way I viewed the Dallas game from last season. Remember, where like as soon as we turned the ball over in overtime, I'm like, we're not winning the game.
That's it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like you're handing it over. Go on.
Yeah, and so I mean that was an issue in 2020 a few times as well. Where it's just like, oh, so close, and I don't know. It was just you knew that the team just didn't have it. Like, oh, they're going to give this ball back, and they're just not going to be able to close it out because they're undisciplined, they're sloppy, and for whatever reason, they just shit their pants at the very worst moments. And so that Green Bay game was just like, all right, I've seen the ending of this one. I know where we're going.
Exactly. And then the week 5, the game that I got to experience, I know I say that a lot, but it's my first and I'll always remember it. You had Detroit making simple mistakes on 4th down by being too aggressive with the football. Yep. You had the Kyle Duggar touchdown. You had the Myers touchdown. You had everything going right. And then week 6, like we said, that was pretty much, I think, Hunter Henry's best game of the year, week 6 against Cleveland. He had he had 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
That's a Tyquan Thornton, which I think towards the end of the season was a Tyquan Thornton coming out party, especially in the game against Miami.
Yep.
And then one thing that blew my mind still was Kendrick Bourne getting a first down on the screen this past Sunday. That blew my mind completely. But as we get into it after, where everyone's saying, oh, you only missed the playoffs because you lost to Buffalo. No, we missed the playoffs because we did stuff like piss down our leg against the Chicago Bears on Monday Night Football. It's games like that that really cost us our season. That's where I go from least favorite games. Like when I look at least favorite games, I look at the Chicago game, Week 7. I look at
that's the
Buffalo,
answer.
the first Buffalo game, because the first Buffalo game, Josh Allen wasn't Josh Allen. He wasn't healthy, but he was still making those goofy throws. And then, for obvious reasons, Vegas. I don't want to say Cincinnati because even when that comeback was happening, I was just like, in the back of my head, that pessimistic voice was kind of going, they're not going to do it. Like, like it was too little too late. So when I look at games that I wasn't a fan of, it was Buffalo, it was Vegas, and it was Chicago, because the fact too that Dante Pettis and Equanimous St. Brown looked like Pro Bowlers and they didn't win a game there on out.
Yep.
That's where it's those games that come back to hurt you.
Absolutely. I think the Chicago game is hands down my least favorite game of the year. I think the whole the quote-unquote quarterback controversy had reached a disgusting point at that point. The whole starting Mac and the offense not doing anything, and him throwing the interception and then pulling him, and the benching is and not. And then Zappy came in, he threw the wide open touchdown to Jacoby Myers, and everyone was just like, "Oh my gosh, it's happening!" And then Chicago didn't blow a single coverage for the rest of the game, and Zappy looked how Zappy looked, and it was frustrating because I think that was the point at which the fan base, per my timeline anyway, kind of like splintered, and everyone kind of staked their flag in the ground, like I am on Team Mac or I am on Team Zappy, and as a result, I don't think the rest of the season is viewed in a fair lens, right? So people who had dug in like, all right, I want Zappy, regardless of what happened the rest of the year, they were like, well, Zappy, you saw it every single time the Patriots played, Zappy trended, and it was like what are we talking about? Like, this is absolutely insane, So I think that's my least favorite game because it made me feel like I was a fan of a bad franchise, because these are the things that happen to bad teams. You know what I mean? Like, bad teams have QB controversies in Week 6 between two players who are not very good, who are not playing very well, I should say. You know what I mean? That's where I'm like, I don't know what we're doing. Because if you're thinking, hey, they should move on from Mac Jones for someone more talented, someone better or whatever, fine. If you're telling me they should move on from Mac Jones to stick Bailey Zappi in there, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, at best, he is worse than Mac. So I don't see it. You know what I mean? And these are the kind of conversations that we clowned the Jets for having last year, Mike White or Zach Wilson, or we've seen it throughout the years where these teams go back and forth on these quarterbacks. I don't know if you've been privy to it, but people had the same issues with Carolina where that fan base was arguing between Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold. I'm like, they both suck. What are we talking about? This year really did remind me of how it went for San Francisco. Really, at the start of this year, where it was Trey Lance or Jimmy G. People staked their flag in one way or the other, and they were going back and forth on it. But at the very least, they started winning games, and so it kind of quelled all of that. But it was just ridiculous because I remember at the start of the year, you'd have people who were just calling Trey Lance a bust. Oh, he's definitely a bust. And then people talking about Jimmy as if he's like the worst quarterback ever. And I'm like, neither of those things are true. Why are we doing this? And so when it came to the Patriots, I'm like, we don't do this here. Like, this is not something that happens in New England. Like, what?
Before we Patriots, because since you brought them up, I want to ask you something. What happens in San Francisco if they run the table next year quarterback? Is Brock Purdy the guy, or do you go back to Lance? Do you bring Garoppolo back? Because obviously Garoppolo's a free agent. As soon as you said it, I'm like, okay, what happens if Brock Purdy leads them to a Super Bowl? Because in my opinion, if the offense can play mistake-free football, they're gonna go to Phoenix next month. That's just that's how I see it. That defense is good enough to where if the offense can, like, look at 2020. Remember for everyone who likes to rag on Mac for doing that, remember Raheem Mostert ran for, I think, 200 yards in that NFC Championship game 3 years ago. So for that, I'm just looking at that of, hey, if Brock Purdy doesn't fuck up and if Brock Purdy plays smart football, like, they're probably going to beat Seattle, and then next week they get, say if they play Tom Brady, which we know what happened last time. Right. I think their defense is elite enough to win them football games.
I completely agree. As far as the question, what happens if Brock Purdy runs the table? I think you obviously bring him back to camp because he's a 7th round pick, so he'll be there anyway. And you have, I guess, a competition. But I think in my heart of hearts, what I honestly believe is if it's close, if you have a competition between Purdy and Lance and it's close, it doesn't matter who you start. You need a new quarterback because I don't believe in Purdy. So it's like if you have a competition between Trey Lance and Brock Purdy and it's close, it's time to start looking for a quarterback. Just because neither of those guys are. I just don't believe in Purdy. You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
they're playing around him, and it's what's getting me is he's kind of having the same kind of games that Zappy had versus the Browns and the Lions, where all of the highlight plays are all on busted coverages or wide open guys, right? So if you watch any of any of
Myers
Brock Purdy's
touchdown
games, right? If you watch any of Brock Purdy's games, it's like, yeah, I'm just going to throw it up to George Kittle, who was completely uncovered, and it's like, all right, cool. I guess he's going to catch 2 touchdowns a game for the next, the next 3 games or 4 games, however many games they end up making through the playoffs. And it's like, cool. Well, is he really playing well, or is he just throwing to open guys? And of course, throwing to open guys is not a bad thing. You obviously want to throw to the open guys as quarterbacks too. But if you're looking at it from like an individual perspective of like, hey, we're trying to evaluate this player, I think busted coverages can really skew a lot of can really skew perspectives one way or the other, to where people are like, oh, this player is good because the team is winning, or they're throwing touchdowns or scoring touchdowns, and you're like, yeah, but you kind of gotta like watch the individual play, and I don't see anything special with him. But if they're on the table, you have to give him the opportunity to, I guess, win the job. But again, if you're in that situation, it's time to find a new quarterback. And for the record, with Trey Lance, I don't really think he's the guy either. But if it's close, you go start scouting now.
Yeah, I also think, though, if San Francisco does bad in the playoffs and say if they lose in the divisional round of the conference championship, I'm only saying that because I can't see Seattle winning. Then again, you never know, but I don't. That's just how I view it.
Divisional games are weird.
Divisional games, especially in the playoffs, are weird.
Mm-hmm.
Even Buffalo and Miami. I know it's Skylar Thompson probably going out there, but at the same time, too, any given Sunday exists for a reason. Probably won't happen, but you know what I mean.
Buffalo hasn't had a dominant game in like 2.5 months. You know what I mean? Like they win their games, but I've not watched them and thought, oh yeah, this team is like a buzzsaw in quite a while. And I know that Allen's hurt, so that's obviously playing a part in it. But I think really the defense is something that people need to pay a little closer attention to as well. I think if they have to play Kansas City in the championship, they're going to lose. So we'll see.
Yeah. And that's the other thing I was going to say too, is just with the Brock Purdy thing. I think if he loses, it'll make the decision easier. Where it's like, you know what? Oh, too bad. It's Trey's job. But I think it's harder though if Brock gets to the Super Bowl, I think that's where it gets to be that tough decision. Even if Brock gets there and loses, I just think that with the Trey Lance decision, say if they go out there Saturday and they lose, oh, you know what? Yeah, we can go back. It's Trey's job again. You can have John Lynch saying that in 2 weeks. That's what I think there. As it comes to Mac and Zappy, I'll go back to May because I remember my timeline was non-Patriot fans blowing it up, being like, the Patriots drafted a quarterback, LOL. And I was like, this is literally a Jared Stidham replacement. I knew Jared Stidham wasn't the guy. I even said, like, when Jared Stidham had his one good game, there was a lot of the Jared Stidham truthers out there that were like, this is why Jared Stidham should have started in 2020. Like, I even said, like, I put out as a joke, like, Zappy over Stidham, and people were like, oh, how do you have a football podcast and everything like that? Or like, how do you not have this or this? It's just like whatever. And then I was just like, man, and then look what happened last Sunday. Jared Stidham didn't look good. It's like that one shining moment. Like even that game 4 years ago, Raiders-Niners, Nick Mullins, this random kid out of nowhere, balled out, and then everyone believed in him, and now he's a backup in Minnesota. So it's just one of those things where Jared Stidham's a career NFL backup. So I was never on a team. I was on a team. Team, whatever quarterback gives my team the best chance to win. I was sour on Mac after the Bears game, sure, but when he started against the Bears, when he started against the Jets, I was like, you know what? You do this to build your quarterback's confidence up, and you know what it's done? And people are going to look at me crazy because I know he had the 3 picks on Sunday. For the most part, I'd say, except for the Vegas game, Mac looked pretty good from the New York Jets game until the rest of the season. He looked good. He has to work on his pocket presence a little bit better and be aware of when sacks are coming and stuff like that, and also try to get a few extra yards on the slide. So instead of making a 3 and 7 of 4th and 2, you can make it like, I don't know, a 1st and 10, just getting those like couple extra yards in him. That's what I want to see out of him, but I'm not going ringing the panic button like the New York Jets are doing with Zach Wilson, because look, it's like I said after the second Jets game, that I still believe this, even though we had a bad stretch after that too. The Jets needed the second game more than we needed to win it, because for them, it killed their season. For us, we were still alive until week 18. But for them, you beat the Bears and you shit the bed the rest of the way.
No, most certainly. I think really the thing I've seen the most is like you have big Mac supporters who are like, "Hey, it is all Patricia, it's not Mac," and then you have big time Mac, I guess, deniers who are saying, "Hey, the coaching isn't great, but Mac also just sucks." And the truth is really somewhere in the middle where he didn't play super well and he started to develop some bad habits that tend to come when a player's under pressure a lot, when a quarterback's under pressure a lot. So he, obviously he bail a little sooner than he usually should, and he'd also worry about the rush a little. I mean, sometimes obviously he was getting hit before he had a chance to do anything with the football, and you're just like, that's not on him. But there were times where you could probably stand in and make a deeper throw, and he'd kind of just check it down just because he didn't want to get hit. I kind of understand that. Really, though, what the reason I'm not yet to give up hope on Mac is because watching some of just watching the all 22, and you're just looking and you're like, yeah, man, like, are there guys open? Sure, but there's a guy right next to him, and he literally just got to the top of his drop. This is insane. So I think the line really was, just absolutely abysmal. And I know we as a collective put a lot of it on the right tackle spot, but the left tackle spot, especially the last couple games, has been atrocious. So like that's somewhere where I'm like, all right, cool. If they can short the offensive line and not have Mac playing under panic, then you can get a good clean evaluation. Because I really think at this point we don't have enough one way or the other to evaluate Mac Jones. And I really think that about all the quarterbacks except Zach Wilson. I think we've seen enough of him, but I don't think we have anything. And even
that's also accountability as well.
Yeah, right. I think his goes a little more than just on the field stuff there. I think we've kind of seen enough of him. But I actually think the same thing about Justin Fields. I don't think we've seen enough of him to make a decision one way or the other. And Trevor Lawrence, for as well as he's playing, I also still don't think it's time to make that decision. I think he is going to end up being him. I'm almost positive of that. But I think right now it's a little too soon.
I think you want a bigger sample size with Trevor Lawrence. I think you need to see a full 17 of him being dominant and a team not sneaking in at 9-8 and winning the division. I think you need I need to see next year double digits from Jacksonville for me to believe that, this team is a legit force and up and coming in the AFC. Right. When it comes to Mac, this is the year really the make or break year. That's always my thing with quarterbacks. You know what? Give him till year 3. Look at Josh Allen, 1-2. I'm not saying Mac's going to become Josh Allen in year 3. No, that's not how these things work. Tua this year, even still. There's question marks, but those are more, I think, off the field with his health, which we hope for the best for him. Hopefully he can be better for next season. And then with Mac, I think if he doesn't suffer the ankle injury, I don't really know how the season goes, because I don't think you can come out here and be like, you know what? Yeah, for sure he wins the games against Detroit and Cleveland. I just you can't go out and say that just because that's not how the sport works. I just wanted to bring up the whole interception thing because that was a real big problem of his towards the latter half of last season and then the beginning of this season. But then the fact that he really toned it down, and he only really threw the ones I can remember was against Arizona, which wasn't really his fault because it went off of him.
He threw one against the Jets in the exact same way. He got hit as he was releasing the ball, and it just kind of popped up and it got picked off. And then he had the three against Buffalo to end the year there.
Which I want to review the 3 from Buffalo because one of them, that Damian Harris's hands it went off Damian Harris's hands. You don't blame that on the QB. You blame that on Harris. That's probably Harris's last play as a Patriot. Look, folks, I love the guy, but it's just one of those things. He just needs to change the scenery. It's like Chase Winovich. The first one was, shades of what happened in the wild card game last year, but instead of Micah Hyde, it was Tre'Davious White making a great play.
One where he put it up to Nelson Aguilar. Interestingly enough, that was the only route Nelson Aguilar ran in the entire game.
Because he's going to be somewhere else next year. You can kind of
see why. Right, he kind of just stopped running, like he was expecting the back shoulder fade. And given White's leverage, it probably shouldn't have been a back shoulder fade. But in truth, the ball shouldn't have gone there in the first place. So I put that one on Mac because that's just a bad decision.
I do put the Hunter Henry one on Mac as well because that was a bit of a high contested ball as well, where you're throwing it into coverage in a bit of a desperation situation. But
what they say: if it hits your hand, you got to catch it. And he was there. He should have caught it. But I'm also not being super fair because I'm kind of over Hunter Henry as a whole anyway. So I don't know.
I still have a feeling that if they were to trade for D-Hop, I can see Hunter Henry being a piece going back to Arizona in return because Trey
That would be
McBride's
cool.
still developing.
Yep.
Zach Ertz, I think there's a chance he retires, honestly. I think
Really? So what is it, the ACL for him?
he tore his ACL back in November.
Okay.
So if we're looking at it there, but also with Arizona, next year's a write-off year because the earliest Kyler's back is probably going to be probably sometime week 6 to 8. Because he just had surgery a week ago, so he's still got a long recovery to go.
What was the holdup on the?
I don't know, but he literally posted a photo last week
cow.
that he got the surgery. So that's the thing. I think the main reason for trading D-Hop more than firing Kingsbury or Keim is the fact that they know, hey, next year is essentially going to be a write-off for the Cardinals.
Yeah.
Unless you find magic in a bottle somehow with whatever quarterback you want to throw out there and you go on a run and Hollywood Brown becomes a Justin Jefferson, it's not going to happen. But see, it's very unrealistic that something like that happens for the Cardinals. So next year's a write-off year. So I think, you know what? You send something like, I don't know, we get DeAndre Hopkins, we give a pick 14, give up, say, Hunter Henry, maybe a second, this or next, and then I don't know, another like a third or a fourth maybe in 2024. Something
I don't
like
think you need to give up all that much for DeAndre Hopkins. I think what's the second round pick? 46. I think you do 46. 46.
I think Arizona will ask for the one, but I think we'll be stern because if we can keep 14 and get D-Hop, that's like an amazing best case scenario. 46, and then I can see Bill, you know what, then taking 14, trading down to the 20s, picking up, say, a pick in the 30s or the 40s or even the 50s as well to recoup those assets because we know Bill loves. I know the trade down memes always come around, but he loves trading around on days 2 and day 3 because that's where he always finds his gems.
But generally speaking, if the Patriots have a pick in the top 15 of the draft, they usually just make the selection, just because you can still get pretty good value there. But I think that's a valid point that you bring up with regards to if they move pick 46, then they have to fill the gap between 14 and the Panthers. I really don't know. I don't know what number the Panthers pick is, but that's the third round pick that they have. So
probably in the 60s somewhere.
Yeah, so you're trying to fill a 50 pick gap there. So I could see it happening in that scenario. I think, generally speaking, I think they make the selection unless they move 46. But I really think you can do 46, a 4, and then maybe like a 5 or a 6 next year, and that'll probably get it done. Just because he's DeAndre Hopkins is going to be 31. The team has no leverage, right? Because they've already
the Cardinals have no leverage.
They want
to
trade him, and he wants to be traded. And more importantly, he has no trade clause, so he really gets to decide where he's going to go. And if he decides, hey, I'm going to this team, the Cardinals really have no recourse but to figure out a trade that works for them. So I don't think that it's going to be a monster haul for DeAndre Hopkins. I really think it's going to be a couple picks from this year, maybe a pick next year. If you could actually make it a player trade and a second round pick or something, that would be ideal for me anyway.
If we can do Henry and 46 for Hopkins, I think that's more than fair. And also, too, keeping 14 is ideal because Paris Johnson just cleared for the draft today.
I did
start tackle out of Ohio State. And if you're asking me, there's only 3 linemen that have secured jobs on this team for next year. And that's Michael Onwenu, that's Cole Strange, and that's David Andrews.
Agree. Wynn isn't on the roster.
Someone's going to give him a lot of money that we can't pay him. Someone's going to give him money.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's like a Trey Flowers, Jamie Collins situation.
He needs to go. Just like he's so frustrated being here. You can just see it in all of his media appearances. I know that he didn't like being on the right side of that offensive line. Changing sides, playing essentially a new position in a contract year. I'm sure that is not something he wanted to do, and it also didn't work just because he didn't play very well on that side. So
yeah,
I think he's gone. I think Trent Brown's the question mark because his deal is like fairly cap friendly for the position he plays. But
if the dead's not bad, you can potentially try to find a way to get out from underneath it.
Yeah, absolutely. But you can also keep him because the money's fine. I don't know that you do though because he has not been very good. But then you have the question of, hey, do you want to completely restart with your tackle situation? Are you looking to add 2 new tackles as opposed to keeping one that you already have and just drafting a guy for the other one? Although I've said it before. I said it in a different space, one of the Twitter spaces I was on yesterday. I don't actually think that the Patriots use pick 14 on a offensive tackle. I know that's their biggest need. I think it'll probably stay their biggest need, but I think they'll probably address it prior to the draft. Patriots don't
So
usually
Orlando
go
Brown.
No. No, I am not big on Orlando Brown. I think he bet on himself and lost that bet. I'm thinking of someone like Jawan Taylor, right? The right tackle for the Jaguars. Someone like that. Who's good, not great. Stick him in there, you'll be totally fine. I think the Patriots will bring someone in during free agency, and that'll give them flexibility. I think my gut's telling me that pick 14 is going to end up being a corner.
I can see that too. I was just saying, Paris Johnson, because there's Paris Johnson, there's Broderick Jones from Georgia, there's Peter Skorinsky, I think is his name, Northwestern. There's those three guys right there that come to mind for the tackle position. But you know what? And Orlando Brown, by the way, that was a joke. That was not meant to be serious because that's out of the Patriots' pay grade. Some team that needs the offensive line help, I don't know if that might be a Chicago thing to do.
Right.
And I also looked up Trent Brown. If they were to cut him, his dead cap's only 1.25. So
yeah, that's tempting.
That's not so bad to where if you have to cut it, it's not a burden. It's not that. I don't know if you saw that. I think it was Matt Ryan's 30 or 40 mil from Atlanta if they basically had to eat. So it's not that bad because that was the Patriots' biggest thing in 2020 more than anything for everyone. I was like, why are they bad? Their dead cap was horrible.
Yep. From Brady, that was like $25 million off of Brady alone. It was just like, all right, this is insane. But
but then also one thing just to look, I do a lot of things on the fly here, so I just want to look up quickly just the free agency class and see what you think about it. So right now, if we look at players, okay, so we look the first two off this list: Nelson Aguilar gone for hopefully.
Yep.
Devin McCourty, that's probably retirement, or he stays on a very cheap 1-year deal.
I think he's retired.
I think he's retiring too. I'm just saying. I think what can happen. Jonathan Jones.
I'd bring him back. I'd bring him back. He's a good player. Just because you need good corners, and you can never have too many good corners. So,
and then
see
there's
what the market is, and then go from there.
Yeah, and then there's Myers, who I can see either go. I think Myers potentially does either go somewhere for big money, or he does the David Andrews, Patrick Chung, Dante Hightower. Where they test the market and then they realize, then they return.
I could see that. I could see that happening. But then part of me is because the wide receiver market's so weak, part of me is just if he hits free agency, he's gonna be gone because someone is going to open up a pocketbook for him. Just because there's really not. It's him and Juju. They're the, and I guess Odell's still out there, but as far as the guys, it's him, Juju, and Odell, and it's all right, these are who we have. I guess DJ Chark is going to be a free agent, but I don't necessarily know that he's someone that you would break the bank for. He had a good year, I guess,
but Detroit though does need to pay. I'm forgetting the first part of it from the Naruto that Jamal Williams did on Sunday night, but the Hidden Village of the Dan, because he's got to he's got to get paid too. Yeah, first swag.
He's so good.
That team is also so likable. There's something about that team. That team is so likable.
Despite having a quarterback who is completely boring, just every time he talks, you're just bro, why are you talking?
Exactly. And then I look the next two on this list is Wynn and Slater, which is gone, and I'm gonna say retired. And I'm gonna say something. CBS because I started to get a little emotional at the end of the game Sunday, and more than the season being over, which it wasn't the case, it was them showing Matthew Slater crying on the sidelines. I was like, I do not need to see that right now. That's where I was because that man is gonna have a red jacket, and he will have a gold jacket. People, I know there was that hot take when Julian Edelman retired. I will die on the hill of Matthew Slater being a camp.
I agree, and I know people will bring up Tasker, the special teamer from Buffalo, and how he should be in, and he absolutely should be, absolutely. Yeah. However, I think what sets that conversation apart from Matthew Slater is Matthew Slater has the jewelry, right? I think that matters. He has, I know that Tasker has more accolades with regards to all pros, and Pro Bowls. It's all right, cool, I see that, but Matthew Slater's 3-time Super Bowl, that matters. That absolutely matters. So I think he retires as well, and I think it's not long before he's in a gold jacket. Maybe bring him back as like a special teams assistant if he is into coaching. That'd be a lot of fun.
Or he can do Plymouth Rock commercials like he has in the past. Hey, I'm not from the area, but I get the channels. I get WBZ up here, okay? So I know the stuff. I know the guys from WBZ. Cody Davis, like that's a whatever.
Yeah.
Jabril Peppers
he was on the team.
Same. I think he's been hurt for most of the stretch. Jabril Peppers, I'm going to say yes, just because in the moments he did shine, he looked good.
Yeah.
He's one of those guys where, you know what, you never heard anything bad about him.
Yeah. Although he was on the wrong side of that first kick return touchdown by Nyheim Hines on Sunday. Just when you watch it back, you're like, I think he's supposed to be the one containing because he like shoots and tries to make a play, and there's absolutely no one outside to contain. And I'm like, I think that's supposed to be you. But whatever. I think he's a good player though.
Joel Juan Williams.
No. He actually would have gone this year if he wasn't hurt. But yeah. And I don't hate him as much as other people do. Raekwon, gotta extend him. I really, really liked what he did down the stretch there. I know early on he was benched and he wasn't playing super well, but down the stretch he has been playing very well. I think that's a player you can extend and feel pretty comfortable with.
Do you get Ronnie Perkins finally on a football field? That's my big question because I think next year we have to play Ronnie Perkins next year.
Have to. I mean, yeah. At this point, it's going to be his third year, and he has virtually no tape. You kind of got to get him on the field. I think the Patriots are good at the edge anyway, right? They have Uche, who's entering a contract here, but he's going to be someone who needs to be extended. You have Judon, obviously very good, and I think Anthony Jennings has played really well as well. Not necessarily as a pass rusher. I think he played really well against the run though. And you just need the third rusher, and in this case, it would end up being Ronnie Perkins.
I know everyone likes to talk about Judon, and all deservingly so. I love Matthew Judon and Uche, but Wise also had a great year this year.
Yes, he did. That was one of the biggest developments for me, just because he was like, all right, cool. I guess I'm going to just be a pass rushing force in my 6th year, and you're like, okay, I guess, like sick, love it.
The only other players I see on here of note would be probably Carl Davis, if you can get him cheap. But then again, you have the position pretty much figured out. Like, I'd rather have a Quale on the roster and Barmore.
Yeah. With Davis as a run stuffer, he's fine. I think though it's probably time to just kind of upgrade. Just upgrade him. And if you can upgrade him with a rookie, that would be ideal.
And then Cardona, I would say yes. Ferenc, for the backup money practice squad, I would.
Yeah, he's not very good.
Break glass in case of emergency kind of guy.
And he's here all the time. Yeah, so I'm like, yeah, sure, why not?
Him, like the same thing with McDermott too. Like McDermott, I was not proud of when they brought him in, but he never like really had like consistent moments of like horrendous play.
Yeah, they did play around him a lot. They kind of hit him on that line just because he is what he is. But I think he's the kind of player you definitely bring back just because it's at the very worst, like, all right, hey, here is the floor for this position. At right tackle, the worst you're going to get is Connor McDermott. All right, cool. If that's the case, sure, you can roll with that. You can kind of scheme around it. He's not going to, kill you. I mean, he's going to give up some sacks, but he's not going to be the reason that you're not contending in any game. So I think bring him back just because they have really no depth. I mean, no one does, but they have no depth on the roster with regards to offensive linemen, right? Yeah. You have Yanni Kajus is a restricted free agent, so he'll have to be tendered. I don't think that's going to be necessarily a problem. And then behind him and Trent Brown, you don't have anyone else under contract, right? You have Andrew Stuber, who I'm kind of excited about. I'm excited to see him play.
Jason Hines too.
Right. So there are some options there, but I think Connor McDermott is someone you can bring back. He's not going to cost you very much. He played well enough while he was here. Why not?
Yeah. And then the only other one I saw in there was Harris, but then like we say, we all agree he's probably going to be gone.
Yeah.
Even the way he sounded too was like, because like when Myers was talking, Myers was like that optimistic hope of like, hey, I'd love to come back. But then Harris was the whole, it's a business and stuff like that. And I feel like when players start giving answers like that, I think they kind of can get a tell of like, I'm probably going to go somewhere else.
Yeah. And plus, I mean, he knows that he's now the backup running back. It's kind of just like, all right, cool. Should I stay here and be a backup running back, or go somewhere where I'm going?
I think the Cardinal game was the nail in the coffin for his Patriot career.
I agree. I think between Ramondre Stevenson continuing to be him, and then Pierre Strong having a big that big run, and everyone kind of seeing his athleticism on display, and then Kevin Harris being that bulldozer down at the goal line, it was kind of just like, all right, cool. The Patriots are going to be all right at running back, and so therefore 37 probably won't be here.
Exactly. And then the other one too was Miles Bryant, but for the love of God, if they bring him back, I'm going to stab myself with a fork. And
okay, hot take. I think I think they're gonna bring him back. I think they should bring him back too. He should not be the starting corner though.
No,
he shouldn't be. But I think really with him, what his issue was, he gave up plays at the worst times. But I think he got way more hate than he should have, because he was mostly solid this year. I think he played better this year than he had at any point in his career. And I think at some point they're gonna, someone's gonna say that. Someone from the Patriots is gonna say that. And everyone's going to be like, what? These coaches don't know what they're doing. But in reality, he did play mostly well. It was just he got put in some impossible situations with some players that he had absolutely no business covering. So I'm like, that is tough. But in truth, he's a safety playing corner, and that's kind of what it looks like.
And then what do you do with Mack Wilson?
I think you kind of move on to him. I like his athleticism. Obviously, if you watched me on with at the start of the year, I was big on Mack Wilson. I still am. I just don't know that he fits here, especially just because at this point, Raekwon is outplaying him. And I think Raekwon is probably going to be cheaper just because he has more experience. And by that, what I mean is this is going to be Mack Wilson's first chance to cash out, whereas Raekwon is already, this would be his third deal. So I'm like, I think Mack Wilson is going to chase a bag, as he should. He's going to chase the bag, and he's going to be gone. I also think he was just a little small for what they wanted him to do, and so he ended up in some bad situations in terms of fitting the run. That I'm just like, he's just doesn't have the size.
It was good. It was a good deal though, trading him for Winovich, because we all knew Winovich needed a change of scenery, and at the same time too, Winovich wasn't really getting the job done at the position.
No, I was over him in 2020. I was like, this guy needs to go. Just because his inability to set the edge wasn't offset by his pass rushing prowess. Like he wasn't so good a pass rusher that you kind of put up with the bad run plays. It was just like you're not really getting it done as a pass rusher, and on top of that you can't set an edge to save your life. I would have made that trade again 10 out of 10 times, even if Mack Wilson walked. I really just think it's a matter of that is just, I just don't like Chase Winovich, man.
I can tell. The only thing is I was going to ask you quickly. So if you're looking ahead to the draft, I'm not looking for players. So basically, if I were to give needs, I would probably say, I want to say receiver and tackle off the hop, but I feel like, that's where you're going to spend your money in free agency. You want experience over a rookie, even though if they're in position to draft one and they take one, I also think because of last year too, you may or may not. I do agree with you. I think corner or safety could be the way to go in round one.
Yeah,
that's another way to look at it. And also too, I still remember all these takes. I remember last year it was Cole Strange. Who's this guy? You shouldn't have taken him. You reached. It was a reach, yes, but it was worth it because Cole Strange had a really good rookie year. And then 2 years ago, I remember I had Giants fans clowning me because they said that, the only reason you drafted this guy is because you couldn't get Xavier McKinney. Well, it's like, well, guess who's had the better career so far? I got called a homer, by the way, when I said Kyle Duggar belongs with the best safeties in the league. I was like,
okay. So on draft night, when the Patriots took Kyle Duggar, I was also called a homer because I had done the research on the safeties. I'd been watching tape or whatever, and that was back when I still posted the cut-ups on Twitter. But I remember with Kyle Duggar, I was accused of being a homer because he went to he's some D2 safety. I'm like, no, you have to actually watch him because he can play. And at the time, I was telling everyone hey, he can be your free safety because he has the speed, and he has the range for it. If you were like, he just reached, and lo and behold, you can put him anywhere. Really, you ideally want him near the box, and he has been exactly who you wanted, right? He was, what? I'll say this. He has been so good that if they took him instead of trading down, if they had taken him at 23, it still would have been a good pick because he is that good.
Yeah, even if they got Kenneth Murray right there at 23, where he went, that would have been a fine pick as well. By the way, other players I'm looking at for free agency. By the way, the New York Jets. I know everyone's saying quarterback. You got George Fant and Connor McGovern, and your offensive line wasn't that good this year, so
Yeah, so they're gonna have to
prepare
do
for that.
something there.
Let's see, Cam Irving, Brandon Parker, Andre Dillard could be another option too, or even
He is going to get a very big bag.
Yeah,
It's going to be astronomical. Someone is going to just pay him whatever he wants.
one option that could be realistic for the Patriots could be Riley Reif potentially because he's in Chicago right now, unless they want to re-up him from. I'm looking at options, where you can get a guy that's on a bit of a bounce back that could be on the cheaper side.
Yeah, I'm sure of it, but I don't know. I think you kind of swing a little bigger on the offensive lineman, just because you have guys who will currently are playing at the same level as Riley Reif. So why bring in a new guy to play as well as your other guys, or as poorly as your other guys, depending on them?
I'm just looking at like the guys with the T next to their name. The other option I see that could potentially work would be look, Andrew Wiley in a perfect world, but we all know he's probably going to get a bag somewhere.
Yep,
potentially. Caleb McGarry potentially.
Oh, the from Atlanta.
Yeah,
has he had a good career? Because I
keep thinking he's the guy that Falcons fans were disappointed in on draft night, but I'm pretty sure that was Chris Lindstrom.
Yeah, or was it Cody Lindstrom? It was one of the Lindstrom. It was the kid out of Boston College. It's who they did not want.
I think it was Chris Lindstrom.
Okay.
Unless you pull a trade for someone, I don't know the route that they're gonna go because the only other name I saw in there was David Quesenberry, and I know Buffalo fans don't like him or aren't fond of him.
Yeah, there just aren't. I mean, there aren't enough good tackles in the league in general, right? So ideally, there are 64 starters in the league. I don't think there are 64 starting caliber tackles in the league, right? I think really the number is very low as far as tackles go. It's probably like 20. Beyond that, everyone's just kind of hoping. You're sticking a guy out there, and you just hope the quarterback gets rid of it before he gets murdered. So
I think guys also too, like when it comes to centers, you look at those. I think Creed Humphrey kind of reset the market for a lot of like, hey, we can go and draft, but it's not always that easy. Sometimes you just have to find like the diamonds in the rough when it comes to finding the right offensive lineman.
You get a guy and you just kind of hope he develops. That's how the Patriots have done it. You have Michael Nwenu, who's a sixth-round pick.
Yeah,
they had absolutely no. He was not supposed to be as good as he is. So it's like, all right, cool.
Those are the picks you like. It's like how I remember one of the first times you came on here was after Godchow got his contract extension last year.
Yeah.
There's like guys like that come in. That's even the other reason too why Carl Davis can go, because guess what? You can run that where it's like a Quale, you can have Barmore, you can have Guy, and you can have Godchow. I think that's a very good 4 set to where you can rotate them in for pass defense, and then for run defense. So you can run those in with D tackle as well. So that's just examples there where hey, you bring in someone on the cheap, they come in. That's why I said about a lot of the guys I didn't know for 2021. I was like, hey, they come in, they do their job, great.
Yep.
That's all I gotta say it.
That's all you can hope for. And also these guys, the Patriots know what they're doing with regards to drafting offensive linemen, right? They don't often draft a guy that you're like, oh, that guy's terrible. Right? They mostly come in and they find a place to play them, right? You had Brian Stork, Trey Jackson were
win a fucking Super Bowl with Brian Stork.
You just went out there and win it. Remember Shaq Mason was a 5th-round pick. He was taken, right after Trey Jackson. Trey Jackson was supposed to be the better player, and then his knees stopped working. And then Shaq Mason developed into one of the best guards in the league. If you remember his rookie year, he was playing fullback. That was a crazy time. And these guys just developed. The Patriots know what they're doing with regards to picking offensive linemen. That's just how I feel about it. So I'm not particularly worried about them finding a guy and making it happen this offseason. I think they need to, and they will. That's going to be a priority. But I'm not necessarily concerned about it. So if they don't take one at 14, I'm not gonna cry about it.
Yeah, like with me with the Patriots, I'm more worried about what they do in March than what they do in April. I'm confident in what Matt Grohl and his staff can do in April because I know Bill lets Matt do all those decisions, and he basically runs it by Bill and he says, "Hey, we're going to take this guy," and then Bill goes to Robert or goes to Kraft. I'm also glad that the conversations came out to where Bill kind of knows, hey, we have to change things up. And that's the other thing too. If you let Matt Patricia coach the O-line, okay, have Joe Judge go work special teams. You just got to bring in guys who can work with I know everyone's going after Cliff or Bill O'Brien, but there's the one guy on the LA staff, I think Zach Robinson, former Patriots draft pick.
Yeah.
If you get a name like that, because that like someone like that can kind of come in like that unexpected name to do good, it could be a good thing. But also too, Matt's brother Mike is the current wide receivers coach with the New York Giants. So maybe you convince him to come over if their season ends on Sunday, because I think the Giants can go through some overhaul this coming off season when it comes to their staff.
Yeah, I think a name that's not getting enough buzz, who I think is a legitimate option, is Chad O'Shea. He's currently the wide receiver coach for the Browns, right? He was the wide receivers coach here for 3 years before going to Miami and coordinating their offense. He obviously knows the system they like to run here. He knows the players they like. I think that is a player, that is someone that you can bring in and really do something without having to reinvent the wheel. Where with Cliff, I think he's a fun name because his offense is so different, but I really don't see it with the personnel the Patriots have.
I think there's a chance that he goes back to college, to be honest.
I think that's the other side of it. I think he's not a great NFL coach. I think he's a great college coach, though, like with regards to the concepts that he runs and his ability to recruit. I think he'll probably end up back in college because they're gonna someone's gonna back up the Brinks truck to him.
Yeah. And then there's one other name I wanted to give to you that's currently a wide receivers coach that could be a fun one. That's Wes Welker, the current wide receivers coach of the Miami Dolphins. I know he had a bit of a rough exit from New England and everything like that, but that's a name that kind of surfaced up in rumors. And I was like, that could be a pretty fun reunion. I also have a number 83 jersey sitting back in my closet right now that I wouldn't mind seeing back here.
It kind of floors me that he's not already an offensive coordinator for someone. I think that's I really don't know how we're still not there yet, especially given how quickly Mike Grable, his rise from like, oh yeah, he's just coaching linebackers, he's the DC and boom, head coach. Whereas like Wes has been around for a bit, I believe he was with the Texans for a little bit prior to going.
He went to the 49ers, and now he's with the Dolphins.
Yeah. And I'm just like, no bigger role yet. That's interesting. That would be a fun name. I really think the entire coaching search that's going to happen under the radar. I really think it's going to be a lot of speculation on names, and then they're going to bring in someone completely out of left field, and we're going to be like, I don't even know who that guy is.
That's why I don't want to get my hopes up for Cliff or anything like that. I will get my hopes up for D-Hop just because we saw it in 2020 when Belichick hugged Hunter Henry. We saw that happen, and then Hunter Henry became a Patriot. So I'm just kind of putting two and two together to where I think if Bill knows, hey, we need to get Mac a true wide receiver one. We can afford it because our cap is good. It's not 2021 good, but the cap is good to where you can bring in DeAndre Hopkins. You know what? You probably get him to restructure his contract too. Push it back, because even remember when Judon and all those other guys signed, a lot of their money got pushed back to when the cap was going up to make it manageable. So it's not all being paid out at once. The only one I know is Nelson Aguilar because his was a simple 2-year, $15 million deal. But I know Judon, I think Henry, Jonnu, and I want to say Bourne. I don't know his exact financials.
Yeah, so Bourne, his first year was like 3, second was 6, and then his upcoming year is going to be 7. So yeah, we kind of backloaded, kind of massaged the cap there. I'm ready to hurt DeAndre Hopkins. I'm ready. I'm like, the more I think about it, the more I'm just like, yeah, that's gonna happen. That's gonna happen. It's gonna happen, and I'm just ready to get my heart broken.
But he has. But here, the thing I learned today though on Twitter, so he can't wear number 10. Obviously, that number's taken. And I thought, hey, his college number is 6. But then I forgot Nick Folk also wears 6. So
I think Nick Folk is gone.
Quinn Norton starting kicker.
I don't think Folk is gone because he's cut or anything. I think he's just gone because he is old. Right? I think it might just be time to retire because the leg just doesn't have the juice. Yeah.
Yeah, and then with the puntering situation, for the love of God, if we have to see Michael Pilardi again, and
if we have to see Michael Pilardi again, I am going to become a Vegas fan or something. I don't know. He was so bad. He was so bad.
And then with the Bailey situation, I look at that as weird, but the Marcus Jones situation, I look at that as that's on you, dude. Like, you missed your rehab. You were supposed to be at certain places at a certain time and do stuff like that. That's on Marcus Jones, where I think he has to earn Belichick's trust back. So I could see him being a little bit in the doghouse. But when you look at most of the positions for next year, you kind of like it to where, look, you have some glaring needs, but it's nothing where it's like, hey, we need to, like, you're not like Vegas, how to overhaul the defense. That's why when I hear the Brady rumors, I'm like, if he's going to go to Vegas, which I still am in the boat of he's either retiring or he sticks in Tampa.
Yeah, I agree.
If he were to go, like, it's not basically like how I was saying, when he went to Tampa in 2020, perfect situation. They're a QB away. That's not Vegas. Vegas needs a whole new defense, and offensively, that's the other thing too. I think Darren Waller's gone from Vegas. I think they're going to try to trade him. I've seen some Raider fans talk about that just because I think they're getting kind of over him just because of his health, but it's a decision I think they would end up regretting.
I don't run in any Vegas circles, so I didn't see that, but that makes a lot of sense. I can see them moving on from him. I can see them trading him, send him to somewhere like Green Bay. You know what I mean? Like a team that needs a tight end. That would be interesting.
It'd be kind of spicy.
Yeah, and they have Foster Moreau. You know what? That could happen. Like it's one of those things that I just didn't think about, but it makes a lot of sense. I know he's a really good tight end, right? He's phenomenal, but you're entering what's going to end up being a soft rebuild anyway. So maybe move him and recoup some of those picks that you used on Devontae Adams last year.
And the other way I look at too with the Patriots, I don't look at it as a soft rebuild or anything. I think it's just, you're basically pulling apart an engine just to put some stuff in to make it run faster. You're not stripping it down for parts. You're not doing all this stuff. No, you're just basically putting some new parts in an older engine. And if that puppy goes, and this team is in the playoffs next year. Because I think that's the goal. Because considering the fact that this year. But that's the thing too, though. The fact that this team was 8-9 and it was a lot of ugly.
A lot of ugly.
You win 2 or 3 of those games. Like, that's other narrative from this year too. And going into next year, like if you look at their schedule already, they steal 2 or 3 of those games. Say next year, if they beat Philadelphia, for example, if they beat, let's say, if you split with Buffalo, even. I know that's a hard one, but like, look, we swept the Jets, we split with Miami, and we got swept by Buffalo. If we can steal one from Buffalo and say steal one from Philly or someone else, that's 10-7 right there. I don't think that's too crazy. So I think next year, I'm still going to put them in that same window where I think 8's worst case, and I would say 11 or 10 would be best case scenario. Like right now, as of Jan 11. But talk to me like March 14th or March 15th. I'm probably going to have a completely different opinion on that.
Yeah, I think the biggest change is the biggest swing on that opinion for me will be whether who they land as their offensive coordinator. Correct. Once we know that, we're like, all right, cool. Then I can see it, but I can see that as well. If they get the coaching situation wrong, though, I think it could be it might be a blow it all up next year, next offseason kind of situation. Just because the team they have right now, and the way the contracts are structured, you kind of gotta start getting it right now, and you don't want to sit through 2 years of a rebuild. Just kind of get it right this year, and get yourself started.
That's why I think this year is a real, that's why you have to go out and try to get a DeAndre Hopkins. That's why, look, I know we threw Pittman, I know we threw Higgins, I know we threw Jerry Jeudy around, but if you want to make these killer moves, you're going to have to do a trade. And look, it's like we saw, which by the way, I still say that Diggs for effectively Jefferson trade was one of the fairest trades in NFL history where each team got something good. But yeah, that's the way I look at it. This year, you have to do your go big or go home deal, because if D-Hop can make Mac look like an average NFL quarterback, we're set going forward.
Yep.
You're good.
Yep.
You are good. The only other thing I was going to say quickly before we go, obviously, look, we talked a lot of Patriots, but we here, probably yourself, I'm going to assume this too, very happy to see that DeMar Hamlin is out of hospital.
Most
got released.
certainly.
Yeah. Because like we said, I was talking about this last week, 2 very somber episodes I had to record. I say this, they weren't fun just because I was really scared. I didn't want to say the wrong words, but I had someone from Cover One Buffalo on. I had a normal guest of mine come on, and we talked about everything. And the fact that 9 days later, he's no longer in hospital speaks volumes. And I'm going to say this, if they show him, like say, for example, they show him on the Jumbotron, or if for some like if he could muster up and like be in front of the team somehow.
Yeah. If he leaves them out of that tunnel, they're going to win the Super Bowl. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like if he leaves them out on Sunday against Miami, they're going to have all the juice the rest of the playoffs. And I was like, all right, cool. Well,
yeah. Between this and then this is like that moment it'd be that moment in the Super Bowl DVD where you're like, we don't know where to go from here. That's the thing. Because like when the one because and also with Sunday too, when the first kickoff return happened, I said like this game's going to be special, and then we held our own. The only thing I'll say is it was that when we went up by 3, that was the real nail. That was the real backbreaker in the game.
Yeah,
and then we let the second one happen.
Return. Yep, that was
because if the second kickoff return happens and it's a tie game, I think it's a different story. I don't think it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it got way out of hand right after that second kickoff. Now the Patriots are on the back foot. The offense has to go back out there. They had just felt pretty good about themselves. They're in the lead, and then boom, here we go.
And Josh Allen was throwing "fuck you" balls around the crowd to all the players, and yeah.
Yeah, so that was a tough game regardless. Like that was always gonna be a tough game, but I don't know, the officiating was tough, and I don't often like to blame officiating, but that was just a really hard game to watch, especially the pass interference on Damian Harris in the end zone. It's like that's pass interference in like every other game in every other league, but I guess we're not doing that.
You know what? That's exactly what it was. I kind of I kind of just closed my mouth and I said at certain points where I'm like. And then it started for being both ways. The only one I was really pissed at was the Damian Harris, Matt Milano one. That was the only one I really got upset at, where I was like, that's a clear flag. Besides that, for the most part, I was like, okay, they're doing one of those things where you keep the hanky in the pocket or you just do that there. The only thing I'll say, too, is I don't like it when announcers show their biasy, and you could definitely tell that with Tony Romo Sunday.
Oh, he was so upset. And, yeah, I've not been in on Romo in 3 years, but it was so frustrating because he was very upset with some of the calls, and I'm like, what are we like? I know how you operate, right? We kind of know with Romo, if the favorite, he has a favorite, he knows who he wants to win or who he should win. He wants the better team to win. So when the better team isn't winning, or he feels like something is going on, he then just shows it, and you're like, dude, what are you doing? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, the way he called that pass interference, the non-call pass interference, just irked the shit out of me, because he said, "Oh yeah, face guarding has to have contact." As he's saying that, Matt Milano is just clubbing Damian Harris in the head, and Jim Nance is just like, And I'm like, this is awful. This is so bad.
See, my childhood was growing up with Hello Friends, Jim Nance, Phil Simms live in the booth. So that was always mine. Like I never heard like the Jim Nance, Tony Romo thing. That was always like just my signature one. The only thing I'll say with announcers is this Saturday, Al Michaels with Tony Dungy. I do not need to listen to that.
Boring. Yeah, that's gonna be pretty tough. I don't think
I like Al Michaels, but I got turned off Tony Dungy after the Patriots Vikings game, when you can clearly tell it's like, okay, Tony, just say you hate the Patriots.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I find his voice to be too flat for the color roll from.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't love listening to Dungy.
No one does. But you know what? You and I have all off season to talk. We'll have to do this again sometime down the road. Maybe if we see the news about like us getting D-Hop, like I'll DM you immediately, be like, you gotta do,
I'll jump right on.
Exactly. But now is the point of the season where, look, are we shattered about our team being out? Yes. But at the same time, too, the playoffs, like, let's get to sit and watch football. That's all we're gonna do
for the next few weeks.
And a hot take I have about this coming weekend's action is Monday night. Dallas is going to lose. They're going to do it somehow. I don't know how, but
is that a hot take? I don't know if it's a hot take. I just don't believe in them right now.
It's just me seeing that Brady's 6-0 all time against them. That's the big thing behind it. My other one would probably be that Minnesota does win against New York. I don't know if that's a crazy take, but I just think that for everyone, I know everyone likes to rag on Cousins. And the Giants haven't been good since the end of November. Their only wins were against the Commanders and the Colts.
Yeah. I can see them winning that. I think it's weird that they're not favored, right? So Minnesota's favored in that game, yet every pundit is picking New York. And to that, I just ask, based on what? Based on what?
I don't know. My safe bet for that would probably be over in points, just because both defenses can kind of let up a lot. That can easily be like a 27-24 kind of football game. I think last time was like a similar score, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was 27-24 actually, because they won on that crazy field goal. But for them, basically, that game's going to be whichever quarterback screws up the less. That's literally what that game's going to be about.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that I trust Kirk Cousins to screw up less than I trust Daniel Jones. Who, I mean, come on.
Who next year we get to see play live in MetLife Stadium, because that's the thing. We get to go to MetLife twice next year.
It's going to be a good time. It's going to be a good time.
Which the last time we played the Giants there, I always think of that game because I know Giants fans hate this, but Landon Collins had the game-winning pick in his hands, and he literally dropped it on his back, and then Gostowski kicked like a 53-yard field goal to win the game or something like that.
That game was absolutely hyped. That was the game where Malcolm Butler broke up the pass to Odell in the end zone, and I was like, no, that was clearly a touchdown. I don't know how they ruled that otherwise, but that was a great game, and then the game-winning touchdown is always exciting.
I was sweating during that game.
I body slammed my wife that day because we were sitting on my bed and it happened, and I just like lifted her and I was like, I can't believe this. This is insane. That was a good time. Good memories there.
Oh, we love it. As long as she was okay. As long as she was good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
She was anyway, more than me.
Yeah. You know what? Episode 205. That's in the books. Enjoy the playoff football this weekend. Tomorrow night, you're probably going to hate to hear this, but I have myself moderating a Bills versus Dolphins conversation, which should be a lot of fun to listen to. I know.
Okay.
I know. But they kind of got in me being like, man, we got to like try to talk and get something going. And I'm like, okay, if it works if it gets views on YouTube, if it gets listens on the podcast, find us anywhere, folks. Apple, Spotify, PodTrack, Megaphone, you name it, we're on there, and YouTube as well. Watch the stream, do all that stuff. Thank you for stopping by, guys. 205 in the books. Like I said, I'm already on the road to 300, and it's the off season, so only one place to go from here, and that is up. Have a good night, everybody.